Right. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hey.
Hello.
Okay,
Wow, look at
we are
this dude.
here, the Secular Crusaders. This
Yep.
is their first video. We are here with
Our. What do you mean there?
FatLasCat.
We're not. It's not. We're not working for someone. It's our video. What are you talking about, Wesley?
I don't give a fuck.
It's their
Anyway,
thing. The Secular Crusaders. It's their video. All right. It's not us. It's theirs.
we've started off
God.
on a bad foot, but anyway, let us introduce FatLasCat,
Oh, it's
the
FatLasCat.
Hello.
Woo.
the atheist, capitalist, white nationalist to the stars. My God,
To the stars.
Yep.
Dancing with the
He's-
stars.
he's like if we crossed Ayn Rand, T.J. Kirk, and Hitler.
Holy crap. That took a big jump.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's like
But
we
my
joined these Ayn Rand, T.J. Kirk, who some people know of, and then basically Hitler. You're basically
Yeah.
Hitler, FatLasCat.
He's literally
Basically
Hitler.
Literally Hitler.
He's literally Hitler, and
Crap, Wesley, you need to be
That sounds
careful
pretty
there.
good.
You told us
Okay,
before that you were literally. Wow, you're like descended from Jews, didn't you just say that before?
oh, fucking barely. Okay, fuck
Okay,
yeah, I don't
barely.
believe in
That's
their
still
religion.
that's still too much.
Actually no. It doesn't come from my my mother, so I'm not descended of Jews. So I'm
Oh.
I'm okay. It's all good.
It's fine then.
So,
Okay.
If
You know
Hitler
what?
was to round us all up, he'd say, you've got Jewish blood. And then he realized, it doesn't come through my mother, does it?
I think he would still kill you though.
Fuck you. I've got blue eyes. I don't really have
Oh
blonde hair.
crap.
But,
Oh wait, no, I've. Oh, okay. Nah, he would
and you
kill
look,
me.
and you look dark, by the way.
I've
You
got
look
tan
Asian.
skin. I've got brown hair and I've got brown eyes. I am literally, actually no, I take that back. I'm dying
Here's a
first.
quite literal question, Zach. Are you part Asian?
I don't know. I have no idea. Probably not.
And here's another question. Your family are whiter than you.
My family is whiter than me. Yes. My mum is whiter than me. My
Home fry
sisters
your
are
dad a
whiter than
carpet.
me. My whole family's
Anyway.
whiter than me. The only person that's not
Anyway.
whiter than me is my dad and my biological grandfather.
Then I think your dad just cucked your mom pretty bad.
Yeah. Like,
Anyway.
hey, our sons aren't gonna be white, just by the way, dab on the haters.
Anyway, okay.
I've got less
Okay, let's-
privilege. How do you
Forget
feel?
about this shit. I need to introduce FatLasCat some more
Some more, yeah, go.
paganism. Tell me about it. I have no fucking clue. I only think of elves when I hear it.
Elves. What?
I don't even know.
What?
Fuck you. I think of Yule. That's about it. Yule.
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah.
I think.
Well, as for paganism, what paganism really is it's kind of like it's the European psychology entombed in a religion. So basically, whenever our ancestors were living in Europe, back in the days of ice sheets and all that nice stuff, they were primarily farmers, and that's sort of where our idea of private property norms really comes from. So whenever they're farming and they're doing their agricultural work and whatnot, they base the religion primarily off of the agriculture. So that's where most of the seasonal stuff comes from. And that's why Yule itself was such a big thing, because it signified the end of the winter. So when they could really start farming and all that good stuff. And
Yule log. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
That's
And
what you
that's
care
really
about, Wesley.
represented.
Yeah.
That's really, and so that culture is really represented primarily in the gods. So for me, like, of course, I'm an atheist.
Same.
But for me, the gods really they signify an archetypical ideal. So Odin, the All Father, the one who sacrificed his eye for the runes and whatnot, for knowledge, and that itself is such a powerful bit of symbolism. Because you sort of give up a part of yourself, whether that part is bad or good or whatever, depending on your life. You sort of have to you sort of give up a part of your time to acquiring knowledge and everything like that. And that really goes for the rest of the gods. So war, farming, even partying if you're like part of the Greek pagan religion, like Dionysus. So
Yeah.
So all of
I-
that, all of the gods really signify a part of
So-
European culture.
It's kind of just. I get what you mean. The culture is signified by paganism. Always has. Like,
I really only know about the Norse or the Norse stuff. That's really all I know about.
in relation to paganism, like, what is the Norse side of it in relation to paganism? Is there? See, I think we're really ignorant on this whole subject because
Yeah, really, basically. I don't know any philosophy behind it.
I know snippets. I know little snippets of it, and
So the thing about European paganism is in Greece and Rome and in Norse, they all have different gods that go by different names. So like you have Odin, and then for the Greek Zeus, and then and with the Romans you have like Neptune and all those people, Saturn, names of our planets and whatnot. But the thing about European paganism is although they have different names, they are all really the same god,
Yeah,
and they
that's
all really
basically
symbolize the same stuff.
It's basically
it's like-
like Muslims and Christians, right? Am I right?
yeah.
pretty
You
much.
said it, you touched on it before. It was something about you're talking about paganism in relationship to capitalism. You touched on it like, really briefly before.
Oh yeah. So the point, and this is really something I learned when I was reading Hoppe, is that whenever Europeans started their agriculturalism, that's really the start of private property norms. So
Yeah.
the thing about like with other societies that are nomadic and they're hunting, they don't really have to worry about protecting property because they go
It's-
around and they hunt and they eat
I mean,
immediately. They don't
Like the
have
tribal,
any.
the whole. Well, I guess tribalism in itself is fairly communistic in a sense.
Yeah.
I mean, like you're all in a group together. It's collectivist, I guess. You're all in
Yeah.
a group
Yeah,
together.
you
You're
all-
all.
Oh my god, my dogs are annoying. Holy crap. Sorry about that in the
Yeah,
background.
Yeah,
you-
no,
you all-
it's interesting.
yeah. You all
So, I
basically
mean-
share the same kill. In tribal.
Yeah.
And in this
But-
way,
Like,
the-
look, I brought back food. Now we all eat.
Yeah.
exactly, and it is pretty much the tribe and the collective, which is they're obviously detrimentally opposed to any capitalistic society.
Yeah,
I feel smart.
exactly.
I sound smart saying that. That's why I'm going to keep saying that shit.
Keep saying
anyway,
that. Keep saying that, Wesley.
That's what
Fool our
you bitches.
listeners into thinking that you're smart.
Yeah. Anyway.
Fool them. Fool them. Do it.
No, this is good. This is interesting.
Yeah, so
I like
but
that.
with Europeans, we uniquely focus primarily on agriculture, and that's where our protection of property really comes into play. Because in order for us to live and to survive, we have to protect our goods, our harvest, everything like that. It all hinges on us, on other people respecting our private property.
From what you've said
And-
of it, it sounds like a very individualist kind of situation.
Exactly, and
And
that's really
yeah.
important there.
yeah. See, I like that. I like the whole the way you're saying it. It comes off good. It comes off something that I can get down with.
Yeah.
But,
Sounds like you're gonna include a but there. You're like, the way you're saying it makes it
no,
sound like.
I'm just fucking awkward. Fuck yeah. Anyway,
Oh my god.
I'm trying to think of the thing I've heard. I heard this I want to hear about like not Christianity, but Christmas. So I hear a lot about that coming from pagan roots. I hear a lot of
Yeah,
people
it's
saying
because
that.
it's because
It definitely does.
to make the pagans become Christian, they're like, oh, Christmas is the same thing as what was it again? It was the coming back of the sun. Right?
Yule.
Yeah, it was just Yule.
Yule.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yule.
And they're like,
Yeah.
oh, let's reel all these pagans in and make them Christian. Whoa.
Yeah,
Sounds fun.
exactly.
See, is
And that's the-
pagan a blanket term for pretty much traditional religious customs of Europe, or is it specifically one area of Europe?
Well, for paganism, it doesn't just encompass Europe. It's basically folk religion for like
Oh,
any group. So like, the Arabs have their own folk religion, and the Indians. You have the Chinese. Like paganism is basically a catch-all term for any group of people that has a folk religion. So,
yeah.
but for us, it would be like Norse and ancient Hellenic religions, things like
Yeah, I know
that.
what you mean. Yeah, like the
Yeah.
Greek and Roman mythology. Yeah, no, that's actually that's good to hear because what was I gonna fucking say? I had it in my head. See, I'm a retard. Maybe come back to me. I'm thinking of something.
Yeah, you are. I feel like also paganism is a lot more freeing in a sense than you say Christianity, which is
exactly.
more like, oh, do not do this, do not do that.
I don't like expansionist religions either. I don't like
Yeah.
that, and you see that a lot in the Abrahamic. That's what I was going to say. In the Abrahamic kind of thing with the Jews and Christians and Muslims, I would say they're all maybe not the Jews, but I'd say Christians and Muslims are very expansionist.
Yeah, they're naturally imperialistic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's the whole idea is that
Speak the word
it's
to
a join
everyone you meet.
it's a join or die thing, especially in Islam.
It's a join or
And
you're
you
going to
see
hell.
You see that in today with Britain and a lot of Germany and Europe and all that opening its borders to Islam. And I saw this thing.
Yeah.
It's on my phone somewhere, and it's showing about how they've all got this idea that not all Muslim all that, not all Muslims act like this, not all Muslims think like that.
have read the Quran.
Yeah, but the whole idea is that they all are in
Not all Muslims
what they
are.
believe. They're following a book that
No all
pretty
Muslims
much
are Muslims. Basically,
Yeah, I mean, look,
they don't follow it to
they
the
are,
book, the thing, which
yeah,
is.
but they're still in their heart believe in something that is
Yeah, no, I'm just
fundamentally
saying, that's
expansionist.
in their
I
heart.
know what
It's
you mean,
just that they're so brainwashed that they're like, oh, my religion's so good, I don't even need to read it to. In a sense, if you know
Yeah.
what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, but what I was gonna say is the whole idea. It's like kind of sneaking its way into Europe, which I don't like. And I know
Hey, look at
so
all these.
some,
Look at all the good things that Quran says. Don't read the Quran though.
I
No,
will
let me
say
tell you
exactly.
what the good
Let me
things
tell
are.
you, it's almost like back in the days where where the only priests could actually read the Bible.
Yeah,
So they could
Read the
feed you
Bible.
anything they wanted.
you
That's
have to
why
pay me,
they
otherwise you're going to hell.
that's why everyone in the Middle Ages was in such like fear of all of it. Because when a group of people have the information and they want to get and they've the only ones who can see the information, it's a fucking recipe for disaster.
Hey, we're gonna have
You
to
have
pay. You're gonna have to pay me to go to heaven. Just by the way,
Exactly. And
Wesley, just let you know.
yeah, obviously Zach is God. I'm not really a true secular. I do believe that Zach is God.
I am God though. Come on,
Can I be
accept it.
Can I be co-God or what? Can I be like?
You can be a demigod. You can be a demigod.
I'll be a demigod. There you go. There you go.
What can I say except you're welcome, Wesley?
Fuck off.
Oh yeah. Thumbs
Okay,
up from
fucking
me.
back to serious roots. But like originally, what I was going to say about the whole it's a sneaky thing they're doing where they're coming in, and yes, not all Muslims believe in like plundering, but all of them follow a text that shows plundering. So that means they obviously want Sharia law. They want to come in, even though if they don't know what it means, they want that law. So they might have no clue. They might have no clue about pedophilia in Islam. They might have no clue about any of this. They want it in because all they know is the tribe, and all they know is that tribe says this is
My
what's
friend
right.
wants
But
Sharia
this book
law,
is the
so I
tribe.
want Sharia law. Come on.
Exactly. They know the tribe. They know the book. So they push the book, right? They don't even know it. It's the same as like what the Middle Ages, where they weren't told all of it. So when they push that in, it's a detriment to themselves and others. And I think the only way to really, I'm pro Pan Arabism, like Pan Arabia for Islam to make its own kind of nation or whatever, like, and let them have their own area. Or I know this kind of sounds dumb and simplistic, but I mean,
Just
let
get them
everyone
off. Just leave them there. Just
leave them to fester in their
send
own
them to the
ideology.
moon. All right. Just send them to Mars. We
They
will
can-
send
they can
them
have the
to
fucking
Mars.
moon.
All right. We will build a
anyway,
spaceship and we will send
I'm
them to
fucking
Mars.
rambling at this point.
We will deport
taken
them
out
to
of the whole-
Mars.
Yeah, mate.
Just like
I'm
the
rambling at
Mexicans,
this
deport
point.
them to Mars.
Fuck off, Zach. Anyway,
Put the Native Americans there. Bam, you got a casino on Mars. How you doing?
fuck off. Okay, I'll let FatLass get back into it. I kind of rambled on for a bit,
Yeah,
but
you did,
Yeah.
but that's fine,
Well,
Wesley.
That's no problem. So
it's
you guys asked about Yule and Christmas.
yeah,
So
yeah.
so the thing with Yule, you guys kind of brought it up, was that is to convert pagans, they used the traditions and the culture of Yule and kind of
Yeah.
mix that with their own holiday that they made Christmas. And a lot of that you kind of see today is like the Christmas tree and the mistletoes, and everything like that.
Because as if they had
even,
mistletoe in the Middle East anyway.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, look, nine-year-old girl under the mistletoe. Ooh, Muhammad wants some of that.
Even yeah, even even so, even Santa Claus is actually like a carryover of Odin. Yeah,
Saint Nicholas. I know. I've heard of that. He was actually a saint who gave out presents to needy children. I could be wrong. I've heard this somewhere. So
yeah,
I've heard that's where they derived him from, was a saint who gave out gifts to poor children.
yeah.
Is that
So,
I don't know.
Well, I was saying something else before about Odin, but alright. Just you and your
Yeah.
Christian ways, Wesley, alright.
Yeah.
Gosh, accept
yeah.
Odin for who he is, Wesley, come on.
So yeah, Odin would essentially do the same thing that Santa Claus does, and he would go to houses, and he actually had a four-legged horse that he would go on, and he would go to the places, and yeah, that
Wasn't
would
it
actually
multi-legged, actually?
basically like
It wasn't four-legged, it was
Yeah.
eight-legged.
Yeah, that's what
Son
it was,
of,
eight-legged.
son of Loki, or child of Loki, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Maybe. I forgot how that went.
So
I've seen
yeah,
it.
he would go on his eight-legged. I'm sorry if I said four-legged. I did totally
Yeah,
say
that's
that.
fine.
But yeah, it's eight. It's eight-legged, and it would go to houses and stuff and deliver gifts and stuff. And you'd have this thing called the Wild Hunt, which was essentially a initiation rites that the younger converts to paganism. So like people of their clans would do, mainly the younger children and stuff. You know, basically a way for the parents to pass down traditions. And that would essentially be Yule. And they took those traditions and they carried them over the best way they could to Christianity. And that's the thing you brought up earlier. They replaced Odin with Saint Nicholas.
And then he was in a cokead, and then
Yeah.
it goes on from there.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the one thing that is better in Norse specifically to Christian is that they had a dwarf named Lit who got set on fire. That's what really does it for me.
For me, I have no fucking clue what you're on about, but I don't know enough about this shit. I have no fucking clue.
But even the Romans had their own version of Yule, Santernella, and I'm not sure if you guys know about this, but like Mardi Gras here in America, they do this thing where, of like they would show like a changing of position. So like the bosses or the bosses would now be like the employees, and the employees would basically be the bosses. And they kind of did that in Rome, where like the slaves would now like become the leaders in these states.
And just for any Australians who are listening, their Mardi Gras is much different to our Mardi Gras.
Yeah, our Mardi Gras is a lot different. Holy crap.
Yeah, I might just a brief note. Our Mardi Gras. Yeah. Anyway, we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, let's talk about that later. Oh my god, yeah.
Yeah, so and they would do the same thing that we do for Mardi Gras. So like basically completely go hog wild and just party during the whole holiday. But you could see like that got transitioned from something that would normally be celebrated around the time of Christmas to another day during the year. Which is pretty cool. Like even the days of the week that we have, like Thursday, was Thor's Day, and all kinds of stuff like that.
Yeah, I've heard about that. I just bought a book because I was interested about Norse religion and stuff, and I just read it. It was really interesting.
Yeah.
So what would be the kind of base pagan traditional religion of the Russian kind of that area, like Russia?
Yeah, the Slavs
Slavic,
had their
yeah.
own. Now,
Yeah,
this one
Slavic.
I'm not actually. I don't know as much as I do about, like, say, Norse or Roman or Greek, but I do really plan on. Oh, my bad, I dropped my phone.
All good.
I do plan. I do plan on studying that a lot more.
Yeah, I've heard about this
The
from
Slavic religion, but
yeah,
yeah, they
Slavic.
do indeed have their own version of paganism.
Yeah.
But essentially,
would be-
it is.
I mean, a lot of my ancestry comes from Slavic areas, Far East Europe and Russia, and even a bit of Baltic.
Yeah.
It's a lot of where I come from, and then Britain, of course. But a lot of it
I'm mostly from what I've heard, German area, really.
Yeah.
fucking Aryan
And see,
piece of shit.
Shut up. Do I look like an Aryan, Wesley? No. I'm
Not really,
tanned.
no. You look like I don't even know. Anyway, go on.
Yeah. So, and that's the thing to remember. So, like, the Russian area and the Nordic areas, the Nordic regions, and Britain are all not that far from each other. So a lot of the pagan in those areas would be very similar. So, like, Anglo-Saxon paganism is very similar to Nordic paganism.
Yeah.
So, like, instead of Odin, it's Wotan,
Yeah,
and
I've heard about this.
essentially the same holidays. Well, except for the Celts. The Celts do have a lot that's different from
Yeah, I
normal
know
Anglo-Saxon.
What I was gonna say is would like Germanic paganism would that come under
I think that's just
Anglo-Saxon?
a branch term, really. Like,
Yeah, but would that come under Anglo-Saxon or not? Because I have no fucking clue. I'm pretty ignorant on this shit. So, but is it like the same kind of area? Is Germany back in that time? Was that its own thing, or was it kind of part of the Anglo-Saxon region?
Yeah, it would sort of be a combination of both Norse and Anglo-Saxon paganism. And since the two of them are already very similar, there's not much variation. So the traditions, for the most part, would be.
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, that's good. I understand. Yeah. So
Yeah.
fucking, I might as well talk about Mardi Gras now. That's in
Oh
my
wow,
head.
yeah. Let's bring that up.
Okay, so you were talking about Mardi Gras in a time to go wild. Everyone goes wild. Yeah, well, in Australia, it's similar, but the one difference being that it was adopted by gays and lesbians and transgender and all that shit
Yep.
as their day. So now, if you say Mardi Gras in Australia, you're obviously going to be looked at as a gay person. So
Oh wow,
Yeah,
that's sad.
You get looked as a gay
That's
person
why-
all the time, though,
it's
Wesley. Hey,
it's every June or whatever. It's the gay,
I really
lesbian,
don't pay
transgender Mardi
attention
Gras.
to it. I really don't pay attention to it, though.
Yes, well, I watch. I have to fucking go on SBS occasionally, and I'm always seeing ads for the
No,
fucking gay,
I never.
lesbian,
I
transgender
don't even
fucking
look at
Mardi
TV.
Gras.
That's how far away from it I am now. I don't even
Oh,
look at
fuck you.
SBS.
What do you even? What do you sit
ABC.
now? They're terrible channels, fuck yeah. But anyway, in case you have not got a clue,
60 minutes.
SBS and ABC. I know ABC is government television, so it's pretty
It
much
is.
indoctrination.
Hey,
It
look
is
at us.
indoctrination, but
Let's make up all
yeah,
these lies. Whoa!
fuck you. SBS essentially is I think it's government funded, but there's obviously, I don't know, it's extremely left leaning.
Just
just is-
all news here is, apart from like some
Except for
stuff.
Sky News.
Yeah, Sky News
Sky
is
News
the only one that's
is not left leaning. Sky News is almost like our answer to Fox News, pretty much.
It's basically Fox News. I'm pretty sure
It
it's
is our
the
Fox
same
News, pretty
thing.
much. It's owned by Fox News.
It's
actually.
owned by Fox News. There we go. Look
It's
what
the
I was saying.
Australian Fox News.
It is
That's all
Fox
it is.
News.
And just like Fox News, there's shit on it, but there's interesting stuff on it. I can't remember his fucking name.
The Bolt
but there was
Report.
yeah, I like him.
He's
Bolt
pretty
Report.
good.
I like the Bolt Report, but there is a lot of bullshit on it. Kind of like Fox News.
I didn't know
but,
you were on it, Wesley.
fuck off, Zach. Why am I calling him Jack?
So where do you guys want to go from here? Would you like to go into
I want to
racial
also.
theory?
It'd be interesting to talk about objectivism a bit, because I know a little bit about objectivism, but I don't know much.
Oh yeah, I could definitely go into that for you.
Yeah, definitely.
So with objectivism, what I do want to say before I really go into it is that objectivism really started out as a universal philosophy. So like it would also like, you know, include like just everybody, like not just Europeans. And that's really where I detract from the philosophy, because Ayn Rand had a conception of like the blank slate and universal, like this concept of a universal man that just followed his self-interest. So think of like communism with like the new socialist man. That's pretty much how she.
I mean, the thing about that is you need to think about demographics, really, and that.
Yeah, exactly.
Race demographics do exist, and that's what a lot of people aren't really willing to talk about, especially in Australia. But go on.
Yeah. So like with Ayn Rand, she really wasn't like. I believe there was a point where like Nathaniel Branden had asked Ayn Rand what she thought of evolution, and she like shrugged her shoulders, saying she didn't know. So whenever I talk about objectivism, one of the key differences between my view of objectivism and the orthodox interpretation, so like the people like at Ayn Rand Institute and what they would say, is that I believe it is distinctly something that only Europeans could really follow due to our capacity for reason and our rational faculties that we developed being agricultural farmers and having to use our mind to grow and harvest our crops and whatnot. And that would explain our psychological innateness for private property norms. That's something that is completely absent from other parts of the world for the most part. And that's really what I just would detract from her from. Of course, and some parts of governmental structure, but I can go into that a little later. But for objectivism, the main points of it really are reality. And that's something you guys have already gotten down pretty well. So like using our mind and our senses to interpret reality and to understand concepts and fundamental laws about reality that cannot change.
So essentially reason?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that would lead us into reason. And then from reason, we use our senses to learn what is best for us. So our self-interest, the things that we can do to benefit our pursuit of productivity and happiness. So like, and that would essentially be probably one of the most controversial parts of our philosophy is seeing selfishness as a virtue. And then from there, we would go on to capitalism.
I somewhat agree with that. Selfishness is a virtue thing. I've only done a little bit of research about this whole thing, but I hit like with rational selfishness, the idea that you own yourself, and the idea of the man, like you being the person, and so long as you don't, it's almost like with the NAP, you don't hurt anyone else, and then aside from that, you are your own person, and you do whatever you want to. You move forward. Anyway, I'll get you back.
I thought. Wow, no, we have to care about others and love others. Come on, man.
Oh, fuck that shit. Fuck you.
And no, put our borders and just let them all in.
Let them all in.
Yeah, everyone in.
Come on, man.
Yeah.
Peace
no
and
borders,
love, bro.
No nation. No Trump, no KKK. No, what the hell's that slogan go?
One heart.
No Trump, no KKK,
Trump, no
no
wall.
fascist USA.
No Trump, no wall, no USA at all.
Yeah.
Why don't we all just make one huge country, and then we won't have to close our
everyone
borders.
just gets into a pile and just fucks everyone. Just like we share our love around to everyone.
Why don't we just make the whole world one country, and then we won't have to close our borders? We can only open the borders in our mind. Come on, man.
Anyway,
open your mind
from
border.
what you were saying, because it was actually really interesting. So we'll get back to shit talk when you're done, but yeah.
Yeah, so from there, from like using selfishness and self-interest, and that is actually something that's pretty important there. So you'll hear like if you listen to Yarn Brook, the main, he's like the main guy
I've
of
heard of him.
objectivism, the mainstream
Don't
guy.
know much about
So
him,
like
but I've heard of
with
him.
him, he actually supports open borders, and one of the things I feel like he really forgets, mainly because he's Jewish, is the fact that
That's just so
if you let
dumb.
in if you let in people who aren't who do not share the same values as you don't really mutually benefit
Well, you
from
don't
them
get the
moving
values.
into the nation.
You
Yeah,
don't
exactly.
get the values. If you like the
it
whole
can
thing.
Oh
Yeah,
my
you
God.
go. Fine.
Yeah. It can only hurt your pursuit of happiness and productivity and self-actualization.
Yeah.
Nobody within the nation really benefits at all. Now what he would say is that, it's a public country, it's a public estate, and, elected leaders can just choose whether they do it or not. And this is really why I support autocracy. It's because if you have one leader of a nation, his self-interest is that of the nation's interest. So like with somebody who owns the country and the government privately, he wouldn't see any benefit of letting in people who would oppose him and his estate and who would try to undermine it. And that's really where I would disagree with Yarn Brook. And so like, and that right there is a good example of pursuing your self-interest. It is on a larger scale than like, say, like trying to diet and do whatever you need to help make yourself healthy and better and whatnot. But like on a larger scale, that would be applying self-interest perfectly. And that would go on to, capitalism, because it's the economic system that really protects your private property and your ability to produce how you like.
Yeah.
And
no, yeah, I agree with all of that. I've always liked objectivism. Actually, the first time I've really heard about it was back in my days when I was See, I used to listen to Rucka Rucka Ali. You've heard of him?
Oh my God.
Yeah, I know him.
Could you stop listening to Rucka Rucka Ali?
Yes. Yeah, so anyway,
oh my
he was
God,
on, he was on the Rubin Report. The Rubin Report, and I was sitting there. I don't know, Zach, if you really watch him or FatLasCat at all, but he's all right. There's some good videos. He's a bit of a yes man, but that's beside the point. That was when I first really heard about objectivism, was coming from him on the Rubin Report, and I'm thinking, shit, I've never heard someone who makes songs about and his parody songs are for the most part retarded. But
basically.
But hearing him say elaborate on this whole thing that I'd never heard about was really originally what got me interested in it. Then, especially the ties to capitalism and all that, which is something pretty much since the beginning of me actually getting into politics, was that I have always been capitalist, and I've been far right capitalist on that sense that it's been going up and down on the area, and I'm almost like a center capitalist right now. I find myself at whenever I'm doing the tests. I always end up being if you get on the Liberty Authority kind of section, I'm like the line between it. I don't really get in blue or the purple one. It's
you know where I sit, Wesley.
It's like
I'm
it was
top
interesting
left.
him talking
Hate you,
about
capitalism. How dare you?
Yeah.
Fuck yeah. Since you're in America, I thought it'd be interesting to know like your thoughts on Trump and as like your general view on how he's going as a president, because we can say whatever the fuck we want about him, but it really doesn't mean shit because he's not leading our country.
Doesn't mean anything to us.
I mean, but then again, our leaders aren't really leaders. They're just
I pay no attention. Our government is just so fucked up.
It's
I
confusing.
don't even care anymore.
It's the thing about our government.
It's confused my head.
So it's pretty much it's a lot like the British Parliament in a way. It is pretty much the Windsor system, but it's the way that each leader has been knifing each other in the back, so pretty much taking over each other's positions over really vague technicalities.
Yeah,
so
you're actually your birth certificate says you're from this specific place, which means you're not allowed to be prime minister anymore. Get wrecked, Luthard. That's basically what it is.
I mean, no, it wasn't really that. It was like...
That's all I saw.
Like,
that's all I looked at.
Oh, that's different altogether. That's a different point and position. But what I was talking about was pretty much with the whole thing. What's his fucking name? The one we just had before Scott Morrison. Malcolm Turnbull.
Yeah, Malcolm Turnbull.
Yeah, Malcolm Turnbull. Everyone left or right has never said everyone in my family, whether they be left or right, have never said a good word about him. And the media, left or right, has never said a good thing about him. And I can understand why he's just this fucking turd. Like, you look at him, he's turd. And I mean,
Malcolm
in a
Turnbull,
way, I don't like the fact that they're getting knifed over technicalities. But I mean, he had to go, not because of this stupid technicality, but he just had to go. And now we've got Scott Morrison, who's like probably our answer to, what do you call, what's the bloke you had before? He came after Nixon. Really dumb. Hold on. He wasn't really dumb, but I'm really dumb.
You are really
Hold
dumb.
on. What? He was after Nixon, like straight after Nixon, when Nixon resigned. Oh, what the fuck's his name? I can't remember. He's like the least memorable president in history. Well, I can't think of his name.
I think it was Carter.
No, before Carter. It was before Carter and after Nixon. He was only in for like 2 years.
Oh yeah, him. I know,
Exactly.
like a god.
Gerald
like,
Ford.
Exactly, Gerald Ford.
That's
like,
what I can never remember that guy.
No, exactly. He's the most forgettable president.
1974 to 1977.
Yeah, he's sat there. He didn't really do much. Just kind of man the helm. Just sat there in his big thing, thinking he's top kahuna. Really didn't do much, but he was actually the only president who has
longer than he was president.
You said he was a really crappy president, so
I didn't say he was crappy. I said he was mediocre in the sense that
And I was thinking Carter, because Carter was really bad.
I don't know much about Carter, but I do know that Gerald Ford was really mediocre. I do know he just didn't. All I really know about him is he didn't do much, and he wasn't really that memorable. And the one we've got now, Scott Morrison, they look very similar, first of all. And I don't really think either of them are doing much. He did much. I mean, he didn't do much, but I mean, I don't think Scott Morrison's really doing much. But it's kind of like you've got. I think politics in America, a lot of it's about aesthetics and how someone looks as a person. And I think politics, like universally, is like that because maybe he was doing good things, but he was just bland. He was bland, and no one remembers. People remember Trump like they remember Obama, and like they remember Bush, and they remember Bill Clinton and all that. They remember these people because they were game changers. They were brash and they fucking. It's a lot about aesthetics. It's more about aesthetics than policy, in my opinion.
They'll remember Obama because he was black, but
that's really big aesthetics, right?
Like quite literally aesthetic.
It is literally aesthetics.
I mean, it's like the reason Hillary Clinton didn't win. I mean,
nobody likes
Hillary
Clinton.
She's a horrible person, but apart from that, she's just like, what does she even do? What's she say? She says
kill people mostly, from what I've heard.
She just says these bland platitudes that no one can get behind. The reason people like Bernie Sanders,
go to the polls, am I right?
But the reason people like Bernie Sanders, and I don't like him, but the reason people like him,
Bernie Sanders? What? Where'd this come from?
I mean, he. Even though I would rather Hillary Clinton than
Bernie Sanders. That's a good thing. People lining up for food, that's a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. But the reason people like him is because he's electric. He kind of changed things a bit, and that's why I believe.
Yeah.
I don't think any of the people give a fuck about healthcare and like war and all that shit. They don't care.
Venezuela was not real socialism. That's a good thing. People lining up for food. Good thing.
You sound.
Yeah.
Buddy, Tommy Wiseau.
Hey. Oh, hi, Mark.
But yeah, you asked me. You asked me what my thoughts were on Trump.
Yeah, let's get back to that.
Yes. So my thoughts on Trump would really be, like, of course he can't really do everything I'd like him to do, but for what he has done a lot of good. He really brought the immigration issue to the forefront, and really woke up the normicons. Like I think, like I know this is something the left wing will like to say a lot, but I mean, him bringing up immigration and the issues that come with it really did really spike the amount of white nationalism that grew in America right now.
But your point is not that that's a bad thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a bad thing.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
Yeah. It really instilled the mantra that demographics are destiny into the normicons, and it really got them a lot farther than any other like person like George Bush or any of those types of people.
Ted Cruz, basic bitch conservatives.
Yeah, exactly.
Basic bitch conservative. Likes God, hates likes God.
Yeah.
Like putting into the military a bit.
What about my roads though?
Yeah. and with Trump, he did something that other Republicans just won't do. He actually went on the offensive and actually tried to drive back the push that the Democrats and the liberals tend to make within the political system of America. Like the liberals and the Democrats, they tend to get what they want, and once they get it, the Republicans will just fall back and
here's the thing
just try.
I find about Republicans is they, like the most of them, I'm saying the normie ones, like they're not playing to take, they're not playing to win, they're playing to compromise. That's a lot of what it is.
Exactly.
They're thinking we've changed, because of what millennials are like. They're saying, well, we can't win, we might as well compromise. So maybe we can ban we can put a few regulations on guns, but can we just have a little bit more than that or whatever? And it's fucking pathetic.
Let's ban the ones that are barely used. Like, can we just keep the ones that are used like all the time in mass murders? Can we just do that?
It's like,
let's just do that instead. Come on.
It's like, maybe, okay, we can tax the rich, but do we have to tax them that much and shit like that? And it's fucking pathetic.
Yeah.
Come on, like, raise it down like 2% tax. Come on. You know what? Do that. Come on.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what? Maybe socialism isn't bad. We get more taxes, which means more like army, right? Come on.
Exactly. Yeah.
Socialism, man. Come on, that's the way.
That's what I hate about. I hate about both sides is the building of the military-industrial complex, which is just fucked up everything. That's a lot of the reason we've got Muslims coming in droves is because of intervention we had 2 decades ago. That's a lot of that is involved by that. So I think we are a little bit to blame. I'm not going to say like we're all to blame as a blanket statement, but I mean. But I'm saying there is part of immigration that was built on the back of bringing war to these countries, and I think in an ideal society, we wouldn't need to go to war for them because we'd understand that going to war for them would ruin our culture by them coming over. Yeah. Every action has it ended up giving them more reason to come in droves. Anyway, we fucking ruined your train of thought, so we should probably let you get back to it.
Yeah. What I was saying with Trump is that he really brought that to the forefront, and now he's like our economy is doing a lot better than it has been. In that case, that's a good or bad thing depending on how you want to solve this issue. But nonetheless, he has done a lot for America at this point in time. I mean, I disagree with like things like the tariffs. Like that's not really bad. I mean, that's not really good. But but
clip that. That's not really bad. It's good. Clip it. Come on.
Yeah.
FatLasCat supports tariffs. Come on.
No. But no, definitely not.
What are you, a libtard?
Yeah.
Don't worry, just say I, and then later on say am, then say libtard somewhere, and then I'll cut that out.
Yeah.
But yeah, he has done a lot more for the economy and for our demographics than any other Republican president has for the most part, and I'd like to see him continue. And if he gets that wall completed before the next term, he'll definitely get elected again.
Oh yeah.
And he just keeps on delivering on everything that he has said so far. And this birthright citizenship thing, him wanting to get rid of it, that's like something that we would have thought would be impossible for any Republican to achieve, and he's just about done it. So
The one
like
thing
he's
I
got it
really,
on the table.
really enjoy about him is that I've never heard him say anything about religion. He's never, ever, ever used religion to push his rhetoric, which is something that I agree, which is originally why I started. One of the first things I liked about him is that he's never tried to say, "Oh, God wanted me to be president," like George Bush said and shit like that.
Yeah.
And I think right now we're in this stage where a lot of Generation Z, or whatever the fuck you'd like to call us.
See, after Z, what are they going to do? They've got X, Y, Z. So there's no more letters. Capital A.
Generation A1.
A1. A2.
Yeah, anyway, no. A2, yeah. But anyway, what I was going to say is Generation Z is like the most conservative generation in quite a while. It's mostly because of the backlash of millennials, and we've seen it everywhere. We've seen shit plastered up anywhere. And my whole point of this is I don't think it's a Christian conservative generation. I think we're going into a higher level of reason. That's something that us and maybe our kids will be looking out for as something. There's a lot about what you preach, and like you're preaching anti-religion, but you know what I mean. Like
you're preaching like, the anti-religion. That's ironic, as I know.
I think a lot of the people our age are a lot smarter than what they give it credit for, and I think people we're gonna start saying. I mean, what generation? We're the generation of polygrammers. We're the generation of people who are interested in this shit. We're like, even though we might put up some fucking retarded storemen occasionally, for the most part, we're just. I think we're the age that are actually going to make a difference with it, because you go back, like kids in the 80s, what were they fucking interested in? They weren't interested in politics. They had no care. They had no care in the world.
Yeah, no, yeah, nothing.
So and
music, Wesley. That's what they were interested in back then. That's the main thing. How dare you, Wesley? I love music. Keep going.
Know you do.
I am a normie
fuck
person.
About it. I listen to Sex Pistols. That's about it. So you can fuck a bit. Anyway.
Yeah. Oh crap!
My whole point. I think a lot of younger people are going to be. Fuck off. They're going to be around our. See what new FatLasCat. I think it's going to be a lot of that kind of conservatism with a twist of reason instead of pushing morality. Because I think we are smart enough to realize that we aren't controlled by outside forces. I think we are what we consider is God, like what Friedrich Nietzsche said. We created God, and we've killed him. And I think the fact that we've killed everything.
God is not dead, Wesley. Have you not watched the movie? God is not dead. I have literally watched that movie, unironically.
Oh wow!
That was like a year ago.
What was it like?
I will apologize for everything that Christian Zach has done. He was ignorant.
Christian, though.
Yeah, I was.
You were barely Christian.
I was at my dad's house. Okay, I had to play it.
Are you in a band called Leviticus or some shit?
Yes. That is from the Torah. Okay, that is from the. Yes, I know. All right, calm down. I know where that's from. Shut up, Wesley. You're a Jew, so of course you know where that's from.
Fuck you. I'm not even a Jew. It didn't come from the side of my mother, so I'm allowed to be. I mean, I'm good in the eyes of Daddy Hitler, so I'm fine.
I know what did come on the side of your mother, though.
Oh, shut the fuck up.
It was me, Wesley.
Okay, let's get back into brass
Okay,
tacks.
how about we go... you know what, we were talking about Trump before. Okay. Maybe he'll get voted back in. He probably will. But if he doesn't...
Yeah, I mean, if Hillary Clinton's running like she said, he's obviously going to get back in.
Or, okay, no. Oprah or The Rock. Pick one.
Oh, I don't know. Who says a woman can be president, Zach?
Who are you voting as president, okay?
Oh, if I had to choose, well, I mean...
I would vote The Rock, but...
Yeah, probably The Rock, too, because he'll probably end up being Republican.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about him as a Republican. I don't know.
I've heard a lot of him about him just lifting weights all the time. Have you checked out his Instagram? Holy crap. That's
anyway,
insane. He's like, he's like, oh, it's insane. It's ridiculous.
There's gotta be
I want to
something else
segue
that-
into The Rock's Instagram for a second. Holy crap.
You
Do you
said,
want to make yourself feel
oh man,
worthless?
I really gotta hear this. But like, you
What
said
we-
something about what happened last year.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
yeah,
This is
yeah.
funny.
Oh my god, yeah. Alright,
I
let's
was
go
at
into
a school. I was at a school that is a majority Aboriginal school.
That's
and
my
our
school?
Aboriginals, yes, the one in Silat.
It's
And,
not good for me or Wesley. I'm still there.
Oh,
Um,
we cannot be
no.
there. Eventually, we will either get fucking gang killed or expelled or both.
okay,
Or
no,
gang killed by
Okay,
the
tell
teachers.
your story, Wesley. I have one that's almost the exact same. This is new. I haven't told you about this.
Oh, you haven't? Okay, this
I
is
have
good.
one.
Okay, it was last year. It was last year. We were me and Zach. We were walking around and we were back in our normie kind of Milo
Yep.
stage. We were saying, "Would you rather feminism or cancer?" kind of bullshit.
Would you rather your child have
And-
feminism
yeah.
or cancer? Yeah.
You would, yeah. And we asked that to this kid, and
Who was
I don't think
Aboriginal?
he was
but
a-
that has nothing
he
to
was
do with it.
Aboriginal.
Okay, nothing.
I-
Definitely nothing to do with it.
listen. Anyway, he didn't understand what he was being told.
No, he didn't at all.
Probably because his parents haven't really fed him anything to like give him any nutrition or anything. He was fucking like
Holy
5.
crap! He's like a twig.
Anyway, get to the point. Okay, he called me a faggot. I'm
You
gonna
look
say
like
that, fair
Justin
enough,
Bieber
whatever.
as well. He also said you look like
He
Justin Bieber.
told me that, and as a response, I said a word that we are not going to say because I don't want to get demonetized. But let's just say
Start with N.
it starts with N and it ends with Igger. Now we can put those together.
Yeah.
Do not say it, Wesley.
Him.
Do not say it. All right.
Starts with N and it ends with nigger.
Oh my god! You just said it.
I didn't.
You did
I
say
said
it.
what
I heard
I
you say
said
it.
what it starts with and it ends with.
No, you actually.
I did not
You
just say
legit
nigger,
just
Jack.
said it. You actually. Okay, keep going. Keep going.
I don't give a fuck. Anyway, whatever.
Neither do I. Why
That's
am I
what
being...
you go. Anyway, I said that to him and he punched me directly in the
Hey,
face. so-
you forgot that you threw his hat and he
I
smashed his
did
coat.
not.
No, this was funny, okay. So Wesley, being the big man, tried to throw his hat on top of a roof. Missed once. Grabbed the hat again, and then threw it again. In which the kid threw down his can of Coke, so Wesley, like as a little
It was
princess,
actually
kind of
Pepsi, but anyway.
Pepsi, alright, Pepsi. Like kind of bent down and slightly placed it there. Like made it sure it was alright, made sure it was on the ground. And then continued to push the kid into a wall.
Did I do that or he did that?
You did that.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's right. He threw his. We both had Pepsis or something, or I had a drink or whatever. He threw his to the ground, and me being the responsible man I was, placed mine on the ground. So he punched me in the head, so I punched him and then smashed his head into a wall, and I got suspended.
And then, like cockroaches, they came out of everywhere. Like literally, holy crap! Out of every nook and cranny,
Fucking hell.
there was an
I
Aboriginal kid.
wonder what we're gonna be like if some interviewer just for like a job finds this.
We both already have jobs, so let's
Yeah,
hope we don't
But
get
I don't
fired.
think we're gonna get any bigger jokes. I mean, bigger jobs than that. But anyway,
Well,
the whole point
okay.
was the
Yeah.
whole point of the story is blacks are quick to anger,
Oh crap!
Yeah.
That was quick.
and I mean, look,
But
I'm
to
not
be
trying
fair,
be
they
honest.
actually are. This actually is a thing, though.
They're
Yeah.
You need to think about demographics, and that's what a lot of what I like about you is you've shown a lot of the demographics and all that, and I don't like having to get into physical violence, but I was a hothead at the time, and I still kind of am. And if he's gonna punch me in the head, I'm not gonna sit there and
Yeah.
take it. And
Yeah.
anyway, the
Do you want to segue onto my story now?
yes, I think
Okay.
yours is gonna be similar.
So
yeah.
I was sitting. Okay, this was a bit different because I was sitting at the time. I was sitting in a library, right, just playing this like dumb game because I can do it.
Yeah.
And then a group of Aboriginal kids had originally tried to steal my little brother's scooter and beaten them up previously. And and then my dad almost ran him over. Okay, so one of them sat down and said, "Oh, I almost beat his little brother up." And actually, no, I think he said he beat my little brother up. And then they knew the name of my little brother, and then they asked what school he went to. So the kid, who was the main one, asked like, "Oh, what school does your brother go to?" And I was like, "I don't know, you tell me. You're the one telling the story, mate. Tell me, come on."
Yeah.
And then he continues to. After that, he just got angry, and they started turning off my computer and unplugging the keyboard, which I replied with plugging the keyboard back in and turning it on, you know, like a normal person does when that happens. And then, what happened? They said, I said, whenever black people are around, that makes me scared because I'm afraid they're going to get my money, okay? This is after heaps of insults that I forgot.
Did you say that to them?
I said that to him.
What'd you say to him again? Reply it.
When black people are around, I'm afraid they're going to get my money.
Did you say that just directly to their head?
I said directly to them. To their face.
Anyway.
This was insults flying around, alright?
Come on, guys, we're not laughers, okay? We're not just fucking ethno and that laughers. We have a bit of class, but my demographics. Anyway,
And then he replied with, "Oh, you got heaps of money. What are you, a pedophile or something?"
That doesn't even make sense.
That makes no sense.
Yeah.
So I replied with, "Yes, the age 3 to 5 is perfect."
Yeah.
Making it.
To which he said, "Oh, what about 6-year-olds then?" And I said, "Nah, too old. That's not good. That's not for my liking." Yeah, that happened. That was great. What else? Oh, he stole my phone and ran around with it. In which he dropped a phone which I thought was mine. I had a closer inspection at it, saw it was his, so I decided to kick it into some metal poles.
Fair enough.
That's what you do with someone's phone if they've stolen it from you.
Yeah.
Oh, what else did they say? Oh, they said heaps of other stuff. I've got a mind blank. Holy crap! It was funny. It was enjoyable.
Yeah.
I think I said something about their father not being around. I probably put that in there.
Yeah, go cry to your daddy. Oh wait. Anyway.
The dude kept telling me to come out front, so I was like, "Nah, mate, you're gonna get your gang on me, man. I don't want to come out the front. You're gonna get your little Aboriginal gang on me. Come on.
Yeah.
I know how this ends. I know how this ends. Come on."
You collective-minded piece of shit. Anyway, no. The moral of the story is that
we're not racist at all.
I wouldn't be racist if I didn't have a reason to be. I'm gonna say that.
That makes your argument a lot better, Wesley. Oh my god.
I've got a reason. I've got reason to be. Before I went to that school, I was I don't even consider myself racist per se because I'm not racist. I believe, okay, whatever, if they want to live like that, give them their own fucking space to
insults
do it.
were flying around, like, I was throwing out what came to my head, alright? I also
actually
said stuff that wasn't, like, racist.
Okay, like, you guys are using the term racist, but the thing is that the term is completely useless and doesn't mean anything. Yeah. It's just like when a Scientologist calls you a suppressive or a Christian calls you a heretic. It's just a word for anti-whites to use against people.
I'm stereotyping.
We're using it somewhat ironically, though.
Yeah, but that is true. We're more stereotyping them, really. It's more stereotypes.
Yeah.
That turned out not to be stereotypes.
I don't think it's really a stereotype because I considered myself to be. I didn't care about race until I was the victim of it. People like. I remember the first issue when I went to this school. I'm not going to name the school, obviously, but I went to this school and
yeah, we're not going to do that.
I think the first issue really was
me.
And I was like 13 at the time, so don't judge me for my terrible fucking thing. I think I had the job of handing out books to the kids, to everyone around the class. And I said, "Oh yeah, because I mentioned someone's name or something, and they go, 'Oh yeah, you fucking retard, that person isn't in our class.' And I'm a week into this class, so I don't fucking know. I have no clue. So, geez, I'm like, and then I said, go back to Mexico. And it was a really dumb.
Oh,
it was extremely dumb. It was extremely dumb. Like, it wasn't meant it wasn't meant to really like. It was just dumb. It was meant to not really make sense because I don't really know what the stereotype there is.
Go back to Mexico.
Anyway, she, who was of Aboriginal descent, went on a
to be
tyrant,
honest,
yelling at me, pointing at me.
She's more pale than me, and I'm not of Aboriginal
descent. She's like the Elizabeth Warren of kids in our school.
Oh my god, yeah, basically, that's actually who she is. Yeah.
I'm one. She thinks she's black because one of her probably fucking great grandmothers got gang raped by him, so she thinks she's black.
Oh my god.
Anyway, she went on a tirade of insults thrown at me because it was really dumb. I was like 13 at the time. So, oh yeah, what are you, a Mexican? And
hey, what are you, some kind of Mexican? Hey,
I think I said go back to Mexico. And this right now, at the time, Trump had just been elected around this time. Okay,
Wasn't
this is just when Trump. No. It was like around the exact time as we found out that Trump would be the 45th president of the United States. It was that time.
Alright, yeah.
And she was saying all this shit, calling me all sorts of shit, bagging out Trump and saying all this really, and all I said was this stupid little thing. I wasn't even thinking about what I said. It was just really dumb. It was really basic dumb shit.
And then we also had the time you made a meme
started off there,
that
and I'm like, dude,
insulted.
And ironically, it was, and not ironically, but I mean coincidentally or not, whatever you want to fucking take of it, it was the only people who cared were those of a darker skin color. The only people who gave a fuck. The other people either didn't agree but didn't say anything, or
I laughed.
Or agreed. He laughed.
Anyway,
the idea of this is that if we want people who agree with our values, I don't think blacks agree with our values. I don't think they do as a I don't think collectively blacks agree with our values. I think maybe, look, if they've got their own values, why don't they have? I think it's a good idea for them to be for blacks to be ethno-nationalistic. I think that's good for them. I think it is good for them. I think it's good for us. It's good for each race to want to be with their own race because they've got their own values. They've got their own traditions. I think we all have our own traditions. And going to that school showed me how different and how alien the cultures are. The cultures between Aboriginals and white Australians. They are alien cultures. Because white Australians have a very, very, very thick skin, and they're thin-skinned pussies. I'm sorry. Well, it's me.
You know what?
Whatever.
You know what, Wesley? On that note, we're on the hour marker, right, Wesley? Okay.
Oh, who cares? I'm not fucking talking out like this.
Well, I mean, you guys can't be too big of a pussies. I mean, you guys took the continent and conquered it.
Yeah, we can't. We're not. We basically did, but I think this is a good episode.
That's why I started getting into race realism, pretty much. That's where I got interested in it, and started talking, because if they've got their own, like when you did the race and IQ thing, I thought that was really, really interesting, and a lot of people have been talking about that, and it's really telling. And I think if we want to live in our own ideal society, where there's a few more questions I want to ask you as well. Are you pro-weed?
Are you sure you don't want to wrap this episode up, Wesley?
Why? Can't we just keep talking?
We're on the hour mark. Okay. Do you understand? Actually, no, don't worry. Keep going.
Fuck yeah. Anyway. Weed. What's your opinion on, like, okay, even like, let me be a little bit less vague. So, like, once you've reached this society in which there's like a one leader, it's an autocracy, everyone is it's a whole capitalistic society, and it's pan-European or whatever. Once you're in that society, on what level of civil liberties do you believe in?
Well, things with like with like drugs or marijuana and stuff, I believe all that stuff should be legalized. And the reason for that is like, for Europeans, we've always been like civilized. We've known when to put things down, and it's harder for us to get addicted. Like, if you look at the stats, like the amount of Europeans that are have addictions to drugs and whatnot are on average lower than anybody else's. And there's even like an economic reason for not wanting to ban things like that, like in America we had prohibition, and if you paid attention, like to the stats, like the amount of alcohol use actually went up once it was banned.
Yeah,
like it was
I know,
through the roof.
It's like with weed. It's like with weed.
Yeah,
Weed
and that's why.
If you look into Portugal, which I found really interesting, they've legalized all drugs, and drug use has dropped, and you're pretty much all the cartels and shit. Like that's another thing that fuels immigration is drug cartels in America. And if we legalize drugs, you wouldn't have that whole ship of them coming in. You know, it wouldn't be that big a deal. Anyway,
along with the drug shipment, you get some Mexicans. Here you go. Buy one get one free.
I keep interrupting you.
Half
I think you've got points. I think I should keep going with. You should keep going. So.
Yeah.
Well, we might.
So,
yeah. So yeah, that's why like I believe that like civil liberties for the most part should you should be free to take part in. The one thing that I am against is like subversion. So like communists setting up labor unions and trying to overthrow the estate by trying to spread their beliefs and whatnot all over into the public sphere, and that's one thing that I am against. But that's not really civil liberties per se, but more of like political freedom, and I don't believe in political freedom. I believe that the state should be owned by one person, and he should set the standards that society lives by.
Yeah. Well, someone who speaks, and as long who speaks for the people inside that society, I guess.
Yeah,
who's
exactly.
almost like their voice, and I guess that can kind of come under monarchism, sort of.
Yeah.
I mean,
so yeah, it is pretty much a monarchy.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. If you read Hoppe, like you will never see a socialist monarchy. Like it will completely ruin like the estate.
Isn't that just bloody USSR or something like that? You know?
Yeah.
Not really, but it's because it's true that true communism hasn't been tried, but you know, a world run by aliens hasn't really been tried either. I know that's a pretty shitty analogy, but
that's basically a world run by aliens is basically a world run by true communism.
A world run by dogs or some shit.
A world run by aliens is more likely than true communism.
I think the one time it was tried was I'm not sure if you guys heard of it, but like Catalonia, like the anarcho-communist.
I've heard barely. I've heard the tiniest little bit about it. I don't know much about it though. So you get
in Spain, there was like the anarcho-communists that took over for a little bit in Catalonia.
Would it last for
Yeah, but then like Franco took over. But like it was pretty bad. Like they had like taken away currency and replaced it with coupons. Like almost like everybody was on like it was basically like everybody was on food stamps.
It's like
and
the
communists,
white mums. It's like a stereotypical stay-at-home mum's dream. We all want coupons. I got 20 coupons.
And like things like coffee and like things that were like seen as something that like people normally used, but basically became luxuries, and the communists would dictate whether you could have it or not. And like this is anarcho-communist, so this is like what libertarian socialist rants would advocate for. I mean, he even called it a success for whatever reason, and this is basically how it was. It was like completely terrible.
Well, I guess one man's success is another man's nightmare, really. I mean, if you think of it that way.
Well,
yeah.
On that note, I think we should probably wrap up this episode there.
I want to do this again if we can, if possible.
We should definitely do it again.
Yeah, I don't know why we're shortening this down, Zach.
Because I'm gonna have to go and do stuff. Oh crap! My key.
Fine, whatever. It's good. It's good. I mean, I've enjoyed it anyway. I've enjoyed having you on. Very smart. Fucking extremely smart.
And all I can say is
Also, this is gonna sound really fucked, but can you like shout us out?
Oh sure, no problem.
Can you, like, if you can put this on your Instagram or some shit, it'd be good. I mean,
yeah,
very small.
We'll tell you when it comes out as well. So
this is our first video or whatever, and it was great having you on.
Check out FatLasCat as well at FatLasCat.
Not that we really have any reach, but yeah,
we don't have any reach, but still check.
I mean,
out.
he was obviously the smarter one on the video, but it was really interesting having you on. Like I love, but it was good. It was good having your perspective. I want to try and also want to say this. I don't want to just have people I blanketly agree with on, or else it'll just be fucking boring. So I actually, Zach,
so
I want to try
become
and
a socialist, by the way, FatLasCat.
Yeah,
and we can have you back on.
Now.
That's the only way we will have you back on. Just by the way.
No, but I want to try and get like any politigrammers. We're gonna scum through Politigram because that's the only way to get people to fucking come on this thing.
Yeah, basically.
So, yeah, but still, I want to get both parties a lame on, mostly because she's hot, and
Yeah.
I didn't say that. What?
I knew that the person that asked her in her questions things, whether she liked South Park or not, was definitely you.
It was me. Anyway.
Oh wow.
Anyway, that's just a joke. I didn't actually say that. That was a total joke. But
it was you. Come on.
I'll have anyone on. If anyone's ever watching this, fucking DM us on Secular Crusaders. Get that fucking logo done, Zach.
I've got it done. It is done. All right. It's not. It doesn't work for Instagram for some reason. It's not going on.
Just take a picture of it with your phone.
That's lame. That's really lame. Okay.
I don't give a fuck. Do it.
Fine. I'll do it. Fine. We'll do it live.
Fuck it. We'll do it live. Yeah. Okay. Good. Thank you for having it on. I might end
check
this
out
now.
our Instagram as well. We'll have FatLasCat and our Instagram in the description.
I hope you enjoyed his perspective.
Yeah.
And
it was basically
I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed TJ Kirk, Iron Man, Hitler having him on, and that's fucking good.
We had Adolf Hitler on, everyone. Okay, see you later.
Yeah,
Thank
bye.
you for watching.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.